If you're enjoying the Health Geeks Book Club podcast, we'd appreciate if you hit the subscribe button, leave a like, rating, or review, whichever your preferred podcatcher platform allows.
This edition of our podcast is brought to you by 360 Health and Well Balanced Nutrition.
Welcome to the Health Geeks Book Club podcast. Listen in as Kristen Norton and Eleanor Russell review all those great health and wellness books you've been wanting to read or you have read and want to talk about. Here's Kristen and Eleanor.
Hey y'all, this is going to be episode 2 of Talking About the Gospel of Wellness by Rena Raphael, Gyms, Gurus, Goop, and the False Promises of Self-Care. We're really opening it up now and talking about what is this wellness movement? Where did it come from? Why are we so involved with wellness these days and self-improvement? What's that all about?
Yeah, well, she has the structure of her book is cool because she'll bring up a topic, tell her personal story about it, and let the storytelling thing pull you into it, and then give you all these good expert opinions and statistics if you want them. But then she kind of has a history block. So you could go through the book and just read the history blocks, which is kind of what I did, because I love the history of medicine. I love the history of my little village of Clemens and that kind of thing. So here we're going to talk in this little episode about some of the things she called our minds to, which I learned things I hadn't known before. Maybe you do too.
Right.
Like, go what?
It reminds me that, even though we've claimed this wellness movement, these aren't necessarily new ideas, and they've just been reinvented.
Yeah, actually, Pythagoras and some other folks were talking about how you need to take care of yourself, and that was a long time ago. But do you know where the graham cracker came from?
This was a good one.
Yeah. Did you know this story before?
I had no idea.
I didn't either. Well, it seems like this Presbyterian minister, I guess the Reverend Graham, and this was back in the 1800s. This is not contemporary. He was preaching that food in the natural state is what we should be eating. So kind of like clean eating back in the 1800s, like you should cook your own food if you want to be pure. And then there was this following of Grahamites who also were, through their faith tradition, encouraged to build strong bodies so they could be in service of their master, God. So the idea of body and weight were kind of introduced there. And this Dr. Graham showed them how to sift flour and use raw flours and make things. Well, it's not anything like the Nabisco graham cracker, but it's kind of where that whole idea started. And I thought that was interesting, that clean eating is, something we talk about now, but it was also something they were talking about in America in the 1800s. Do you want to say anything about that before I go to the next little history tip?
I don't think so. I was trying to review that. It was just so interesting. Oh, I'll end it on this. Graham passed away at the age of 57 from, ironically, complications from several opium enemas. And all of his followers, bad diets, petered out.
Yeah, not recommended today.
But a preoccupation with unwanted ingredients in pure food, a knee-jerk reaction to industrialization would repeat itself in time.
Yes, it is.
It was like, Kellogg, not William, but John, had a sanitarium, and he would do all kinds of like coffee enemas and stuff like that. And he did
purgatives.
He did cornflakes
to
Basically
settle down hysteria.
Interesting. Yeah, tell us about the next one.
Okay, well, there's one about Ellen Swallow, who was the first woman admitted to MIT. And that was a long time ago. And I don't have the date on this, but it's, I think, 1900, something like that. Because she sort of influenced the food science industry and also the American household by encouraging women to wipe down their counters, mop their floors, be the manager of the home, make a clean home. And you are foot soldiers for health if you are the woman of the home. Well, that puts a lot of responsibility on you then, which is another thread that comes out in Rena Raphael's story, is that if you do everything right and you still get a bad outcome, it's your fault. That's the head game, which it may not be your fault.
Right.
And there's that story that I've often come up when people say, oh, the universe will take care of you, abundance is there, which I like to think about. I like that idea. But I'm thinking Nazi Germany. I'm thinking people in concentration camps sitting there going, oh, the universe is great and abundant. I'm not sure. And she brings that up as well as one of her examples. I like your Anna because I've thought that idea too. There's sometimes bad things happen to people that are good and are doing good things. And it's man's inhumanity to man, or it's the luck of the earthquake hitting you, or whatever, So anyway, I think that responsibility laid on women's shoulders for being the foot soldiers of health in their homes has a good side to it. Certainly you can influence the health of your family, but I don't think you need to be overly burdened. You can share some of that with the family members.
Right. Yeah, that's just one example of the things that have been laid on
women
as what all the things we're supposed to be responsible for and think about for others.
And then when we work outside the home these days, we still carry some of that baggage. And then our relationships also, there's not enough time for everything. So anyway, it sets up a dynamic that's not good. The other thing that Ellen Swallow was important in doing was the Pure Food and Drug Act of 1906. So one of the first policies on food safety. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
She got her degree in, I had it, hold on, in 1873 she got her
from
SB
MIT.
From MIT.
Yeah, which is pretty impressive. Women were not in the academy very much in those days.
No.
All right, well then the next group is has to do with the fitness fad with a nude twist, which I thought was really fun.
Yeah.
This woman named Dr. Bess Messendiak, also a physician, and this is around 1937, influenced body culture. Life magazine did an article about her movement. She was a female physician, but she had to get her degree in Europe because the American schools evidently did not admit her. And she felt that if you gracefully move your body in the nude, you will have a better body consciousness, which I think is probably true, because when you see yourself in the mirror with nothing on, you go, yeah, I'm pretty conscious of that body now. But I think if you move it, then you begin to feel it. And so she had an exercise manual that was published in 1905, and it was in response to the fashion coming out of the Victorian period where women wore these tight corsets and narrow shoes, not good for us. Breathing problems and passing out because constriction of blood vessels and respiratory function. So she was pretty smart, I think, to observe that and say, that's not good for us. Let's don't do that anymore. And then by 1937, Yale University was actually promoting her program, and they were then introducing us to the concept of beauty and health. That if you look good, you must be healthy. So that sort of starts the influences of the connection of beauty to wellness, which we see a lot of in the marketing of wellness. Like you have to wear the clothes, get the makeup, do your hair a certain way, get the shoes. You got to look the part.
Right, and they only usually show one type of person in those ads for this kind of company.
Yeah. So they say that this Dr. Menzendiek influenced Joe Pilates, which we have a lot of Pilates studios now. So I thought that was kind of fun. You want another history story, or have we got time for another one?
Sure.
Okay. Well, you talked about purgatives, so let's talk about the puke doctors.
Okay.
Yeah, you like the puke doctors? 1809. Samuel Johnson believed sickness stemmed from an imbalance of internal temperatures. And so to fix that, you just have to release the toxins. So you got to puke them out and poop them out. So he had all sorts of enemas laced with things like cayenne pepper. And I'm sure other things, but I must have been
Drano enema.
a little uncomfortable. He didn't have a lot of confidence in the medical community. But I will tell you, in the 1800s, medicine is not what we have today. Medicine was surgeons and some tonics and maybe arsenics and the what do they call the people that mix chemicals?
Alchemists.
Alchemy, yeah. So the history of medicine in America is pretty interesting. So this was kind of prior to it becoming a better system than we had at that time. But anyway, it also started the conflict between alternative practices and what the medical community was recommending. Because he'd seen his mother treated with some heavy metals for some kind of respiratory tuberculosis or something. Mm-hmm. And he said she was ushered quickly out with that therapy. So he had a distrust of medicine because he felt it killed his mom, although the disease might have killed her as well.
Right.
So then we have...
Did you write any notes about the Depression era ads where they pressured the moms into feeding their children nutrition-enhanced cereals? And the advertisements specifically said, it's not Sally's fault. She's not doing well in school. She just has a neglectful mom.
And if you eat these things, she won't have shyness and some other little behavioral problem. It's like the mom's responsible. Yeah. See, that's that mantle of the soldier of foot soldiers for health in the home.
Yeah.
It's the mom's fault. You didn't feed her the right thing.
Yeah. Oh.
Guilt. Mom guilt.
That's terrible.
And I think today we have a lot of mom guilt about, your kid's obese. So you're a bad mom. Mm-hmm.
Doesn't
or
always
you're
work
not
that
feeding
way.
your children organic foods, or
Yeah. Can you help me pay for these organic foods?
The whole Kim Kardashian debate. She opens up one article about Kim and what's her sister's
the
name?
other one.
The other one.
Yeah.
I don't
One or the other
keep
one.
up with the Kardashians, clearly. But they fight about whether they should have sugar at a kid's birthday party. And it was quite the debate.
Yeah, they
Interesting
got into
story.
a fight, evidently, a physical fight. Which, reality TV is promoting excessive behaviors, which I think are not something we should be promoting. I don't think it's healthy. Yeah. Although you should voice your grievances.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, all that history is really interesting, right? And it's like, okay, there's always been a little bit of a dark side to wellness. There's always been these tricky advertisements that are playing mind games on women most often. And that this kind of opens up the picture of, to me, what I see as the dark side of wellness. And that's when self-care is framed as a way that makes us at fault for not taking good care of ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Doing the right thing.
Right. And it's when marketers and self-proclaimed gurus make these promises and go all in on their one idea that they had experience with. And then the messages that make us feel like we're never good enough. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, she says nutrition was imbued with a sense of morality and elitism, claiming to ensure good nerves, composure, energy, beauty, and steadfastness, and would also secure your future prospects.
yeah, we could have a whole episode talking about the nutrition points.
Yeah,
maybe we'll do that next.
She talked about some of the drug fiascos, some thalidomide, and I would add DES. There have been some really damaging things done with medicinals and pharmaceuticals. So a lot of the times when we're saying what you should and shouldn't do, you do need to take into account what pharmaceuticals are on board, because they do influence function. There are all sorts of fun things in here about pumping iron. I'm going to live to 100, which made me think of our book that David Sinclair wrote.
Yeah.
Blue Zones?
No.
What?
It wasn't Blue Zones.
No. David Sinclair was the geneticist that talked about.
It was the key to longevity or something like that.
I don't know. I can't believe we can't remember the name of it. I'm Not Going to Die, How Not to Die. I don't know. That's a different book. But David Sinclair is the godfather of cellular anti-aging theories, and was talking about supplementation and practices to keep your genes.
Lifespan.
There you go.
And
While we age and while we don't have to.
Right. I'm so sorry, David. I can't believe we forgot the name of your book. But yeah, and so she talks about that, living to 100. And there was a really curious story she tells about Dick Cavett's show. And if you're not as old as me, you don't know who he is.
I know who he is.
And he was a great interviewer. And he had one of the pioneers in the natural health movement on his show to interview him. This guy started the Prevention magazine. His name was J.L. Rondell. And it turns out after the interview, they moved him to a couch so the next guy could come in to talk. And it's all on screen. And the guy goes, and died on screen.
Right.
Yeah, and it was not that old. And it was like, oh, this is not good. Here's someone advocating for wellness saying, I'm going to live to 100, and then he croaks on the TV at something like 60 years old or less.
And Dick Cavett is still alive, by the way.
Oh, is he? I didn't know that.
Yep.
Yeah, but he believed the secret to longevity was a nutritious diet. He did it. He was an alternative medical practitioner, but he too died early. So that thing have guarantees. I think the wellness industry cannot, like you were just saying, one of the things that we hope we do in our practices is not make these claims that, do what we say and this will happen and you will live to 100 and be happy.
Right.
Yeah, there's a lot more to it because it is that constellation. It's not just the conversations we're having. Where are we on our time there, Tim?
16 minutes.
Oh, well, then let me tell you one more. It was the astrology movement went to the White House, and that had to do with Jean Dixon. I thought, this is kind of a weird story. She had a vision.
The astrologer?
Yes, about the assassination of Kennedy, very early. And it happened. It came true. And so everybody said, oh, we're going to. So Nixon brought her to the White House and consulted her on all sorts of things. But there then became this thing called the Jean Dixon effect, which is about our psychological tendency to remember our successful predictions while ignoring the more frequent failures, which she had many more.
She had a lot of false predictions.
Premonitions. And so that kind of helps us think about, why do we believe it when somebody who is not a scientist, is not a nutritionist, is not an exercise physiologist, says, come to my gym and pay $6,400 for a weekend and we'll just solve all your problems. Like, why would you believe that? But because it happened for one person or the people that are selling you this thing, so you believe it, or you want to believe it. So we have that tendency.
Social proof is powerful.
Yeah, we have that tendency to do that. So I think we have a long history as Americans of being influenced, and we are humans, and we are a population of humans. So I think in the rest of our conversation about this book, it's going to be fun to dig down into Rena's observations of nutrition and wellness, fitness, and supplementation, and the gym.
Yeah, I think that was a real cool history lesson. Those were really fun because they're just throughout her book, these little flashbacks. Mm-hmm. And Eleanor, I appreciate the rundown of all of those. That was.
I'm not sure I hit all of them, but
no, you didn't.
They were entertaining.
But that's
interruptions.
more reason to read the book.
Mm-hmm.
If you're interested, I recommend it. I like it.
Well, I'm Eleanor Russell at 360 Health. Number 4u.com. Reach out to me and let's continue talking about how your wellness plan is going. And if you have questions or just want to have a conversation about it, reach out.
Cool. And I am Kristen Norton of Well Balanced Nutrition. We are registered dietitians helping you with behavior change, having a healthy relationship with food. And we invite you to visit us at wellbalancednutrition.com and sign up for a free clarity call to see if nutrition coaching would be right for you. All right, see you on the next one.
Bye-bye.
The views views and opinions stated in this podcast are solely those of the contributors and are not necessarily those of our distributors or hosting company. This podcast is copyrighted, and no part can be reproduced without the expressed written consent of Kristen and Eleanor.